How's your teeth, man?
I'm right, I'm good. I'm not sure if he's doing the music or not. So,
Go inside the huddle with Sky Sports, Neil Reynolds and Jeff Reinebold.
I hope he leaves that first bit in. Welcome to Inside the Huddle. I'm Neil Reynolds, just back from the dentist. Jeff's checking how my teeth are. Jeff Reinebold with me as we're going to look back on week 6 in the NFL. They're all good, Jeff. Thank you. They're all good.
Are they all still yours? Or have you got
Yeah.
a couple new
No,
ones?
yeah. I mean, I won't be that long. Give me. Oh, dear me. I mean, it was like pulling teeth watching Jacksonville in the second half yesterday. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the second of 3 games in London. We'll look at some other big news from week 6. We'll also pick our players of the week and our coaches of the week. And even though it happened last week, right at the end, I want to get your thoughts on the first firing of the season, Jeff, Robert Salah. We'll get to that at the end. Let's talk about the Bears then. 35-16 winners over the Jacksonville Jaguars at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Jeff, it was just a privilege to watch Caleb Williams. I mean, the numbers aren't huge, but 23 of 29, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 runs for 56 yards. I was very impressed.
I think you have to be impressed, Neil. And what to me is the most impressive thing about Caleb Williams is the growth that we've seen in 6 weeks, because he looked confused. He looked like a rookie the first couple of weeks. And each week he's got a little better, and he looked in total control in what should have been a Jags home game, really. I mean, they played in London so many times now. It should be like a home environment for them. And the Bears dominated the game.
There was one period of play in the second half, Jeff. They got down near the goal line, the Bears, and he was rolling to his right, and it was really crowded. And he kind of had a man coming back across the middle in the middle of the field, and he just threw it away out of bounds. Then on the Bears' next drive, he was rolling to his right again. It was around about midfield, but Cole Kmet was in the middle of the field, wide open. And he did the old Elway, throw back across the body, connected with the pass. That, to me, spoke volumes. He knew when to throw it away, and he knew when he could take a chance.
Yeah, and to me, when I watched that play, and the Kmet play is the one really, really illustrates what he's capable of physically. You have to be so good on defense. You cannot make a mistake with a guy who has the athletic ability that Caleb Williams does, because on that play, the Jags had a free runner on defense. They should have had him hemmed up in the pocket for a sack, but because one guy didn't get as deep as the quarterback, which is contained, he rolls out, gets out, and has the vision, the awareness, and the athletic ability to throw across his body, which is an absolute no-no for young quarterbacks. And he just made a play. And that's what these athletic, dynamic young quarterbacks in the National Football League can do for you.
He has had the comparisons to Patrick Mahomes, and they're lofty. They are going to weigh heavy on 22-year-old shoulders. But there was a play in the first half, Jeff, where it was a good rush by the Jags, and they tried to rush him early and kind of keep him in. And he stepped up, and I can't remember the exact yardage, but he goes downfield for about 30 yards. And it was on third down, and that's what Mahomes does. He will break your heart on third down, keep a drive alive with his legs. The arm talent is really, really exciting. The touchdown pass to Keenan Allen, where it was a tight window, he kind of back-shouldered him in the middle of the end zone, which you always associate back shoulder throws with the corners and stuff, but you know what I mean? He had to throw it away from the defense. It was great.
Absolutely, because there was such a small window for him to throw that ball into. And you mentioned back shoulder. When we talk about back shoulder, he threw the ball away from the defender, like you do in basketball. That's how they teach you to pass in basketball. Pass the ball away from the defender. And those are the kinds of things that receivers, number one, they enjoy it because it keeps them safe. And number two, it gives them an opportunity to make a play. And you see that starting to happen. Everybody talks about chemistry with the receiver. Well, chemistry with the receiver is reps and reps and reps of knowing where the receiver likes the ball to be thrown and putting it in a position where he can go get it. And I think that's what you're starting to see, out of this Bears offense. And Caleb Williams it's been an undisputable fact since we first evaluated him that he has all the talent in the world.
Yeah. I thought as well, Jeff, I wonder sometimes on a personal level with these young guys as well. So I spoke to him in the week. I sat down with Caleb and he talked about how excited he was to play in London. He said he was going to take a moment as he runs out the tunnel. It's a new thing. It's a big stage. It's the only game being played at that time in the NFL. And then he goes 3 and out. Then the Jags have the ball for like 10 minutes or so, it feels like. I mean, it was a big, long drive for the Jags, which led to a field goal. And basically, my point is he did everything that we talked about in 3 quarters. He almost didn't touch the field in the first quarter. Yet to put that, or to have that patience to know that the game will come to you rather than thinking I haven't been on the field for nearly a quarter. I just thought that was, I don't know what his thought process was, but that impressed me.
Well, I think a lot of that kid, maybe unwarranted, he's gotten a lot of scrutiny about his personality, about, the image of him crying in his mother's arms at USC during a game, his painted fingernails, all the things that really shouldn't be that big a deal if you evaluate the player on the field. He made the plays that were there for him to make. And it's important to understand that, the splash plays and the throws across the body and all of those things they're great, but you got to hit the layups. You got to hit the easy ones. And you watch him do that. And so I think if you're a Bears fan, what an exciting time, because you also saw out of that offense some balance. DeAndre Swift ran for almost 100 yards. And, they looked like a good football team. That's a Bears team that looked like, hey, we can talk about the playoffs. There's 4 teams in the NFC North right now that have won at least 4 games. Every team in that division's won at least 4 games.
Jeff, me and you always think alike. I'd written down here DeAndre Swift and playoffs. So Swift had 119 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. Cole Kmet had 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen had his first 2 touchdown catches as a Chicago Bear. DJ Moore made a couple of plays but didn't have to take over this game. Rome Odunze only needed 2 catches. Jeff, as you talk about the playoffs, and obviously there's a long way to go and the division is brutal, they look pretty complete at the moment, the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, because, you know that they're always going to play good defense, right? That's just a given in Chicago. But now you're seeing really a team that has, you go through it and you talk about weapons, right? DeAndre Swift can be 1,000-yard back. He can be 100-yard a game guy if you give him enough touches. You talk about Moore, you talk about Dunze, you talk about Keenan Allen, and now Cole Kmet really, I thought, had a great game. 2 touchdown catches. He showed, ability to uncover himself and make plays. And how about this, Neil? He has not long snapped since he was in high school. And he was the emergency long snapper for the Bears because somebody heard he'd done it in high school. He gets like 2 or 3 chances during the week of practice. He has to go out and do it in this game. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, it really is an amazing story.
Yeah, I felt like the Jags lost all their momentum, Jeff, on the first drive of the game when they jumped off sides twice with the football. False start penalties led to being inside the 20, led to a field goal, not a touchdown. When the game was at 21-10, the Jags had just scored, and there were a couple of third downs for the Bears, and one of them was 3rd and long. And Caleb throws the ball away, and the Jags are going to get him off the field. If Trevor marches them down, it's a 4-point game. They had penalty after penalty in the secondary, and they kept the Bears on the field. Next thing you know, it's 28-10. It's the final nail in the coffin. And drop passes, penalties. Andre Sisco, the safety, said the team quit. This is alarming, isn't it, for Doug Peterson?
Yeah, Doug's got a mess on his hands, and his quote after the game where he said, "Nobody expected we didn't expect to be in this situation. Now we got to figure out a way to get out of it. We better figure out a way really fast to get out of it." I know Mr. Khan gave him a vote of confidence after the game and all of that, but the reality of it is when you look at his football team, They're not very good. They're not very disciplined. You talked about the penalties. Little things show up on tape that guys don't do. We talked about Caleb gets out of the pocket on a play. They should have him sacked because one guy doesn't have the discipline to rush as high as he needs to rush, on a blitz. You see Calvin Ridley on the sideline going crazy about not getting the ball. And, just everywhere you look, it's starting to unravel. And
this is a big week, Jeff. Let me ask you. Let me ask, with your experience of NFL Europe, when guys are thousands of miles from home, if it's going great, then you can just keep that ship rolling. If things are not going well, things get heightened, don't they? This is a big week for the Jags because they're staying here in London. This is a big week for them to kind of come together, or who knows what's going to happen.
Well, I think there's an old saying in coaching, really, that winners, get together and talk about, how to keep it going and how to get it right. Losers get into small little groups and complain about the other small little groups. And I think that's what Doug's got on his hand. That's what it looks like to me with his football team. And you're right, Neil, it can be even intensify the problem because you are far away and now you're all going to stay together. Right. And guys that, Coach Vermeil used to say it this way, and I hope you bleep this out if you need to, but he said love company, right? And what he meant was complainers, guys that are complain about how hard the practices are, or they're not getting the ball, or whatever their complaint is. They try and find, that soft ear that'll listen to, so they can offload their problem. Well, that just creates more problems. And I think looking at that football team, the way they play, their body language, because I'm a big believer in body language, and Doug, frankly, suffers from this a little bit. Sometimes his facial mannerisms aren't exactly what you would expect out of a guy that's leading an NFL football team.
And we talked about this on our coverage yesterday. Trevor never seems to get angry. And that might be a good thing. That his receivers might love him for that, Jeff. But I wonder if there's like the odd Tom Brady scream at them to get themselves going might help this team.
Well, something's got to be done, right? Something has to change because, this is now, I think they've lost, 10 of the last 11? And,
right.
And when, that's a terrible tailspin. And though it's spread over 2 seasons, it's indicative of internal issues. Number one, you're not quite good enough. You missed on some guys. And number two, you're not playing the disciplined brand of football. You're not making the plays that are there for you to make. And it makes the problem worse.
Jacksonville are playing against New England at Wembley next Sunday. Let's move on to some other games from week 6 then. This was eagerly anticipated. Jaden Daniels against Lamar Jackson. Washington 23, Baltimore 30. Jeff, Baltimore have now won 4 games in a row. I came away from this game, though, thinking these teams are both 4-2, and they're both pretty good.
Well, this is really an interesting game because these teams are only 48 miles apart, Neil. The Beltway, there's a highway, as you know, that because you've been in Washington a number of times in Baltimore, there's a highway that runs around the 2 cities called the Beltway. So this was the Beltway Bowl. That's what they called it this week. But I think what it was really was a definitive statement game by Baltimore. And I think that really the Commanders were fighting up a class, right? They were like a middleweight battling a heavyweight. And
they were always kind of just behind, weren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. And they, you saw they're better, right? I want to make that statement. They are better under Dan Quinn. Much, much better. They have a bright future with that young quarterback, but they're not quite primetime ready yet.
Yeah. Lamar was 20 of 26, 323 yards and a touchdown. Derrick Henry, 24 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, closed out a couple of drives. I mean, those are the two as well. Zay Flowers had a good game, over 100 yards receiving, but these are the two that are creating. And executing the identity of the Baltimore Ravens.
That was actually, without a doubt, that win had a stamp of the DNA of the Baltimore Ravens all over it. Great defense, pressure the quarterback, stop the run the football. Like you said, when you run the ball as well as they did, 176 yards on the ground. Again, here we go, over 150 again. Lamar chips in with his odd 40 or 50 every time. Henry is, again, how in the world, I'm going to spout off here a little bit, but I don't know, Jerry, how you didn't find the money for this guy, because don't tell me that there was no money for him, because this guy is
Rico Dowdle.
He is worth every penny he's making in Baltimore, because he sets the identity of that team, that physicalness that he runs with. And it was great, if you're a Ravens fan, to see Mark Andrews come out. This was he'd been kind of struggling to make an impact in the game, and I thought he had an impact in the game. And you mentioned Zay Flowers. He was targeted 9 times, had 9 catches. That's pretty efficient day of work.
That is very, very good. Let's move on to Tampa Bay against the New Orleans Saints. So the Bucs win this one 51-27. I want to talk about Baker Mayfield, Jeff, but I'm going to backtrack first and give you some background. So I was doing the interview with the commissioner at the NFL Live thing on Saturday morning at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A picture gets put on social media, and then there's a Twitter account, says Ryan Fitzpatrick. Somebody talked about a game in Ireland, and Fitz wrote back something about, I'll meet you in Dublin and tell the commissioner I like his shoes, or something like that. And I thought Fitz is never on X. He's never on Twitter. So I texted him. I said, is this you, or is this like some sort of burner account? He's like, no, I'm on. So anyway, so look out for Fitz on Twitter, because actually he had a really interesting back and forth with Kurt Warner this morning. I read that he said there's an epidemic of quarterbacks completing the easy passes and taking checkdowns to kind of pad their stats, look like they don't want to get the blame for any defeats. So a very long-winded way of saying that Fitz was saying, give me Baker Mayfield every day of the week. All he cares about is winning. And Baker's numbers in this kind of back that up. So he 325 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. He was picked off 3 times. It was far from perfect. He's left the game at some point into the locker room. He had his head kind of plowed into the floor. Next thing you know, he's back in the game, lead blocking on a reverse, trying to throw his body in there. And I mean, he did have a good game in terms of throwing for 4 touchdowns. But Jeff, he's not perfect, but you could see how people would rally around him, and other quarterbacks who used to play the game have a lot of respect for it.
Absolutely. And I think especially Fitz would have a tremendous amount of respect.
He's that sort.
First of all, they're both beards. They both got great beards. So, you can start with that one. But they both played the game the same way, even though Fitz was not nearly as mobile as Baker is, because Baker can move around in the pocket really quite well. Fitz never met a long ball he didn't like. I mean, he never, if you wanted to dial one up, Fitz was your guy. I mean, he was going to, and he would, and if you talk about taking risks and throwing into small windows, he had tremendous confidence in his ability to make plays. And, you think back and some of during Fitz's career, there were moments that you saw him. I remember he beat New England one time, and it was pure swagger. It was just the guy going out there and saying, I don't care, I'm throwing it, and let's go. And I think they really appreciate each other.
Remember that big play when he against the Raiders where his helmet was pulled all the way around like that, and he threw it anyway, and Mahomes is saying this is a real no-look pass. And Tampa Bay, we overlooked maybe a little bit. Jeff, they ran the ball 35 times, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sean Tucker, running back, had 14 carries, 136 yards, a touchdown. He had 3 catches, 56 yards, a touchdown. Bucky Irving had 81 yards and a touchdown on the ground. I mean, top bowls in these Bucs, maybe we don't pay them very much attention. Maybe we should.
Well, I think you got to, because you've seen now how they can rise up, and they can, going to New Orleans and doing that, hanging 51. a half 100, my man, a half 100 against Dennis Allen and what has been a proud Saints defense. That is an impressive thing to do.
Let's talk about putting up lots of points then. The Detroit Lions beat the Dallas Cowboys 47-9. It's the first time Detroit have scored 40 or more points in back-to-back games since 1962. So another little check off for Detroit. Let me just give you the background on Dallas. So they were 8-0 in the regular season last year at home. They have been 0-4 since then. In the playoffs, they lost to Green Bay heavily, and they're 0-3 at home this year. And in those games, they've allowed an average of 42 points per contest. So all of that, just you think Jerry sitting in the palace he built, watching the coach on the field, Mike McCarthy. So we can talk about Mike McCarthy in a second. But Jeff, Detroit, 184 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Jared Goff, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, their offense is absolutely rolling. And we'll get to the only negative, which was Aiden Hutchinson. But let's start with Detroit's offense.
Well, you look at Detroit's offense and you talk about balance and you talk about having the ability to attack you in so many different ways with so many different weapons. I mean, St. Brown and, you got Laporte at tight end. You got a great rushing attack. You got maybe the best right tackle in football. Yeah, I mean, you start looking at the line. We have been so conditioned that the Lions aren't good enough. Well, this isn't the old Lions. These Lions this is a good football team. Branch and that crew in the secondary have really, really, really started to play now. Again, we'll get to Hutchinson, but you look at Dan Campbell. I mean, he has put together a very, very good football team, and they're incredibly competitive. They're a team that looks like they love to play. Like it looked like when I was watching the game, for the Cowboys, it looked like it was going to work. And for the Lions, it looked like there was kids on the playground. They were just out there free balling and having fun. And I think that's the difference between the two organizations. And you mentioned it was not a very pleasant way for Jerry Jones to celebrate his 82nd birthday.
No, joking on that birthday cake, I would imagine. That's a great way to put it. I think Detroit do look like they're having fun. Obviously, the heartbreaking scenes, Hayden Hutchinson, he was leading the NFL in sacks. I mean, this was a bad leg break. This was a bad leg break. They didn't show any replays. I think it was touching, Jeff, but also concerning, and it was serious. The amount of players from both teams that were around him, literally 53. You had 100 men. You almost had 100 men round the car as he was being put on it, which was lovely to see, but it showed how serious this was. You just hope, because this was a bad one. This, Jeff, to me, looked like an Alex Smith type one. I'd hate to go there because I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to play internet doctor. All I'm saying is it looked this bad, and then it looked bad.
Yeah, there was no question that it was serious, incredibly serious. And then when you saw it, it's one of those ones like Alex Smith where you have to turn your head away.
Yeah.
And I'm sure fans saw the genuineness of, you talk about the brotherhood of the NFL.
Yeah, I love that.
In the game, people that are involved in the game, at that intimate level, whether you're coaching it or playing it, you recognize how these guys put their bodies at risk. And for all the competitiveness and all the trash talk and all of the, pushing and shoving, when it really comes down to it, they care for one another because they appreciate how difficult and how dangerous their job really is. And when one of those guys goes down, it's cause for everybody to take a second and say thank you that it wasn't them, and pray for the one that fell.
Yeah, let's wish Hayden Hutchinson all the best and for a full recovery, because he is great fun to watch. Let's just wrap up on this game, Jeff. Obviously, going back to the start of the season, into the offseason, there was no contract extension for Mike McCarthy. He's coaching in his last year of his current deal in Dallas. I mean, none of this is helping his cause.
No, and that was if you watch the post-game press conference, that was Jerry's press conference. That was most of what they talked about was, are you considering making a midseason change? And it was Jerry speak, but he defended his coach. He said, I'm not thinking about that right now. And no. And, about 4 times had to, how the media gets, they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get you to say something. So I think he handled that pretty good. But, Mike McCarthy understands, right? You don't have a contract beyond this year. You're on thin ice to start with, and your defense has gone completely south. When we saw Zim's first iteration of this defense in the opening weekend, we said, okay, they're going to be all right but they've lost player after player after player, and they've always been a high risk, high reward bunch in the secondary. And we saw today they got torched a few times because they were guessing on routes and that kind of stuff.
Player of the week, I'm going to go with Caleb Williams. We talked all about it. I think the numbers, he's been outperformed certain places with numbers, but I'm going with my eyeball test. I loved how he played. He was a pleasure to watch. And I was just said to J-Bell on our show I said, I'll just remember watching him for the first time in London. It was that sort of day. It was really fun to watch him. What about coach of the week for you, Jeff?
I'm going to take an entire staff, because what has transpired in Florida this past week, where they had Hurricane Milton, was one of the most powerful storms that's ever cut across the state of Florida, and it really decimated Tampa Bay. They had to leave the city. They had to go out, they had to fly out to practice and do all of that. And then they're doing all that while they're worried about their possessions, their families, their relatives, their home. And for them to go out and play as well as they did. And then post-game, I don't know if you caught Todd's post-game press conference, but post-game, he dedicated that win to the city of Tampa Bay and the people of Tampa Bay who weren't able to get away, and the ones that are have lost homes and lost possessions and lost lives. And I just thought it was really a class move by Todd Bowles.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for the Bucs. And wish everyone well in Florida. Let's wrap up there, Jeff. I haven't spoken to you since Robert Salah was fired. He's the third coach. Doug Peterson, if you're watching, look away now. He's the third coach fired after a London game. We had Dennis Allen back in 2014, Joe Philbin in 2015, now Salah. 4 games into his 4th season. Is this a quarterback head coach relationship thing, Jeff, or is it you think it's more than that? I know I saw some stuff you put on social media and in our little groups as well. There's a coaching job that had to be done as well.
Yeah, the reality of it is, that we saw that there was not a great relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Robert Salah, and that was evident to everybody. And also what was evident, and why on our show last week I said that both Hackett and Salah better get it fixed fast. Well, I didn't think it was going to happen that fast, but I had heard from some people I know in New York that there were rumblings in that building. Here's the thing. Woody Johnson did not hire Robert Salah. His brother hired Robert Salah because Woody Johnson was, the ambassador to the UK during that time. So Woody, he was never Woody's guy. And that's important because when it gets tough, you want to have the owner in your corner. And I don't think he ever truly was. The timing is an interesting one. It's now Jeff Ulbrich, who got the job, is a University of Hawaii kid and came up through the NFL 9 years with the 49ers. He's the logical choice. And I think he has a chance. And here's why, Neil. The locker room loves him, right? I think they didn't. I don't think they ever saw Salah as one of them. I think they see Jeff as one of them. And if it's going to get fixed, that's how it'll get fixed, a la Dan Campbell, right? And I thought that Jeff showed some stones early by changing his signal caller. Now that had to be tough for Aaron Rodgers, but that was. And, it was his first opportunity to stand on his own 2 feet and say, no, this is the way we're going.
Yeah, moved away from Nathaniel Hackett as the play caller to Todd Downing. And Jeff, it worked for Antonio Pierce, that interim head coach, into a full-time head coach.
Great. It's a great analogy because, Antonio did the same thing that Jeff's going to have to do. You first have to have your locker room. And if you have the locker room and you get a little bit of success, you got a chance. Remember, if they win next week, they're in first place. They're in first place in the division. How about that?
I know, incredible stuff. Never a dull moment in the NFL. So we will be back next week, myself and Jeff, to wrap up week 7 in the NFL. Jeff's always fun. I've got to run. I've got loads of writing to this. Hey, you can tell when I'm busy because I don't set up the nice bit in there where I've got the lights and stuff. I'm just in the kitchen. It's like, I just got to go. Hit record.
Oh, man. I tell you what, you are a man for all seasons. I love it.
Say goodbye to the good folks, Jeffrey.
Aloha.